Hey folks, Nathan here from Star Wars Beyond the Films and Cloud City Casino, a Star Wars gaming podcast, which you can find over at StarWarsReport.com. We're going to be taking a look here real quick at the hardware for the Oculus Quest. Now, why am I talking about this and introducing it relating to Star Wars podcasts? Well, it's because probably many people who are going to be looking at this are people who are jumping over from one of those two podcasts, specifically because the Oculus Quest is currently the home of the game Vader Immortal Episode 1, or the VR experience Vader Immortal Episode 1, which has you taking on the role essentially of a smuggler who winds up embroiled in a plot with Darth Vader on Mustafar with your trusty droid sidekick Zoe. It's a great Star Wars VR experience. Right now, you want to be picking up a Quest if you're going to be checking it out. And there are two different Quest models that are out there. You have a 64 gigabyte version that is basically $400, and for $500 you can get the 128 gigabyte version. And the reason why that matters is that the Oculus Quest is not like most current VR systems. I'm a big fan, big proponent of PlayStation VR, particularly if you have a PlayStation Pro to play with it and you're playing with the second, slightly updated model of the PSVR that allows 4K pass-through if you are going to be playing on a 4K television. Love that system. Huge proponent of it, great game library, and so on and so on. But it requires a PlayStation 4. The HTC Vive, the Oculus Rift, the new Oculus Rift S, both require powerful PCs to play, and the Oculus Go is a standalone unit, but it's meant more for watching things than playing things. The Oculus Quest sort of bridges that gap between the Go and the others, in that it is a standalone system. You do not need a computer, you do not need a gaming console, anything to be able to play with the Oculus Quest, and it is designed for gaming. Okay? So this is a new Oculus headset with some redesigned Oculus Touch controllers that just out of the box is a game system in and of itself. It's very, very portable in that sense. Runs on an Android system, and the game library is going to vary. Right now there's a fair number of very strong launch titles, a few more that are coming here within the launch window, and then we'll see where it goes from there. Face Your Fears 2 is one of them. Super Hot VR, of course, made the jump. And so on and so on. Beat Saber, of course, how could you not have Beat Saber? So, I want to take a look here at what you actually get in the box. The only variation you're going to see is just the hard drive size for the price, so I'm not going to differentiate between the two different 64 and 128 gig models from here forward. This is your box. On the back, it points out a few of the primary features like precision controllers, it's all-in-one VR, easy setup in any room, which is true. Basically, you go into your room and it's going to use its cameras to figure out where the floor is, and you double check and make sure it fits, and if not, it's as simple as just slowly squatting down and touching the floor with the controller to reset the floor level. And then you set up what's referred to as the Guardian, either for stationary or room scale VR. If it's stationary, it's just basically a ring around you. But then if it's going to be room scale, like if I'm playing in my kitchen, which is a nice big open space, there's a lot of stuff on the floor near the walls. So what I wind up doing is you click, create Guardian or change Guardian, and all you really do is you point with your controller to draw a quick outline, as if you were drawing in chalk, around your play space. And then it recognizes that play space from then on, and every time you walk into that room, it knows that's the room, and it knows that's the boundary in which you can play. Okay? So when they talk about easy setup in any room, that's what they're talking about. And that Guardian also helps in that if, say, you need to check the world outside your VR space, if your head passes through the quote-unquote wall you've created for the Guardian, first, if it's getting close, you see the grid. If you pass through, you see sort of a black and white, slightly smaller scale version of the real world around you. So it makes it easier to navigate. It does point out some of the highlight games: Vader Immortal Episode 1, Sports Scramble, Dance Central, National Geographic Explore, VR, Dead and Buried 2, and Creed Rise to Glory. Now, as we look at the physical goodies here, it's important to know that this is designed to be something you can travel with. So a travel case is probably a good idea. There's plenty of third-party ones out there. I went ahead and got just the standard Oculus Quest branded one that you can get on launch day and after. $40 travel case, works really well. Nice and tight, yet very protective. And inside, you'll see we've got our HMD, the Quest itself. We've got our two Oculus Touch controllers that have been redesigned. And inside this little thing here, we're going to have our USB-C to USB-C charging cable, the charger that goes with it, and also inside the box, you will find a safety and warranty manual and a reference guide, neither of which will be particularly useful because most of the information that you'll need, it's going to give you during setup. Let's look at the actual unit itself, the Oculus Quest. Okay? You'll notice here, kind of looks similar to some of the other ones. The key difference here, though, these are not screws. Those are cameras. Okay? Most VR headsets at this point require some type of sensor or camera to be pointing at you, and then it's reading something off of the equipment to know where you are in relation to where you started and so on, right? That's not the case here. Here, it's essentially looking outward from you to figure out the positioning, and that is a big deal. I think about the game Super Hot VR, and when I was trying to play that on PlayStation VR, I ran into plenty of situations where I was trying to duck down or turn around, or turn around in some other games, and there were times when the tracking would go all wonky because I'm trying to turn around or squat outside of the viewing range of the camera that's trying to look for the lights on the headset. So even though it's got the gyroscopes and the accelerometer and everything tracking movement, it's not able to see those lights and it gets all kind of screwy. Here, that's not the case. I found that I'm able to almost go completely prone. It still knows where I am. 360 degrees around me, it still knows where I am. And it notices my environment and knows, based on that environment, where my Guardian should be set up, where my play boundaries are in that room after I've used it in that room once before. So really nice with this 6 degrees of freedom movement with this outward-facing camera system so that instead of something having to track me, I'm essentially tracking myself while wearing it. Okay. Just a plain top here. The bottom, you have your volume control. Then this slider is going to help you set your interpupillary distance. That is the distance, essentially the screens are from each other, or the lenses are from each other, so that you get a nice crisp 3D image. It is stereoscopic 3D, as most VR headsets are. Heck, you can do stereoscopic 3D just using a phone and a cheap Google Cardboard type thing these days. Okay. On the sides, you have a place to plug in headphones on either side. You've got your little charging port here for USB-C. There's your power button on the opposite side with a little indicator of different colors, right, for on or charging, etc., etc. Now, one thing that's really nice about this, it's designed for people who wear glasses to be able to adapt it. So this is what the unit looks like without any of the padding on it that's going to rest against your face. Okay? And then you've got the padding itself that rests fairly comfortably, though, obviously a little warm. But then they give you this. It's a little spacer, right? And if you wear glasses, as I do, then you pop out your little foam piece here, your little padding piece here, you stick the spacer in, and then click this into it on top, and what you've done is given yourself enough room for your glasses. As for the fit, it's got kind of a standard setup here. You're going to basically put it in, these move up and down. You're going to angle it down so that this part is around the back of your head, kind of where your head starts to curve back inward toward your neck. And then once that's done, you're going to use the Velcro on either side to tighten the sides, and then you can change the angle a little bit by changing the top Velcro strap there. The idea being that it helps you get a nice, good, not just a tight fit, but a good angle on it. Now, I have to say, though, if you are used to, as I am, playing on the PlayStation VR, the Oculus Quest is going to be a little bit of a sea change because it becomes much more standard in terms of how it feels to be wearing it. PlayStation VR, to me, is still the absolute gold standard when it comes to comfort for a VR headset for long play periods, because it puts the weight essentially around your head with that little ring. The visor part that actually has the HMD on it is kind of like hanging in front of your face, and you can scoot it in and out. Nothing is actually resting against your face. Whereas in this case, it's like most VR headsets. You've got some weight to the back of your head, you got the straps on the sides and the top, and then you're going to have your actual unit basically resting on your forehead and a little bit on your cheekbone, depending on your fit. But pressing against your face. It gets much hotter, much more uncomfortable over a shorter period of time. That said, you're looking at a battery life when you're doing heavy gaming of about maybe 2 to 2.5 hours, give or take, maybe 3. So maybe those longer sessions aren't as big of a concern when you're dealing with a unit that, unless you're going to plug it in while you play, which you can do, is not going to be something for longer play stretches anyway. Now, I gotta say, if there's one thing that's really been kind of a revelation to me with Oculus Quest, it's the Oculus Touch controllers. Again, I'm used to playing on PlayStation VR. You're using Move motion controllers that were designed in the PS3 era that weren't really meant for VR, that have sort of been co-opted for VR, and work pretty well. They're being tracked by glowing orbs, you've got your face buttons, you've got your move button, you've got your triggers underneath. One thing that you are desperately lacking is any analog sticks. And you are dealing with tracking that, of course, is going to have to go back to the use of the cameras. There's really nothing for your middle, ring, or pinky fingers to do while you're playing either. It's primarily a thumb and pointer trigger type of controller. Not so with the Oculus Touch controllers. And these have been redesigned so the rings are on top as opposed to on bottom so that they can be more easily tracked by the headset. This is your right hand controller. You have your B and your A buttons here. You have an analog stick, which can be clicked downward. You have your Oculus button, which is essentially the one that sends you back to the menu or that will realign you when you're out of alignment. You have a trigger. It's tracking motion and all that kind of stuff. It's doing the vibration and everything like you'd expect. And then you have your grip button. So as you are holding it, you're doing a lot of natural motions where you are gripping with either these fingers or this finger, or both, as the case may be, and sometimes even getting your thumb involved with how it's resting on the analog stick. They're a little bit smaller, I understand, than the original Oculus Touch controllers, and heck, before that, they were just using an Xbox One controller. Really feel nice, and they track incredibly well. Playing super hot, precision makes a difference, but so does not moving when you don't want to, not having any jitter to it. And never once ran into that. Although I will say, the fact that you're holding it like this so your hand is kind of out and open did cause me to crack my knuckle pretty bad on a countertop when I stepped beyond the Guardian like an idiot. Hey, I was reaching for a gun in super hot. Leave me alone. Your other controller, pretty much the same, except designed for the other hand, so kind of a mirror image. So you got your grip button, your trigger, in this case the menu button down here. Then you got Y and X, your left analog stick, and of course the ring is tracking you as you go. You do have straps, kind of rubbery straps on each one to help make sure they stay attached to your wrists so you don't wind up accidentally throwing them, as is pretty much standard for motion controllers these days. So there you have it, a quick rundown of the Oculus Quest, what you get in the box, and a little bit about how it works differently and how it sort of changes things up depending on what you may have tried before in VR. I gotta say, I've really been enjoying it. I've played, I want to say, 7 games at this point. Vader Immortal Episode 1, Angry Birds, Isle of Pigs, Super Hot VR, Face Your Fears 2, Robo Recall, and so on. Lots of varied experiences. I found the tracking works fantastically for all of them. The Guardian system works great. Never really ran into any issues with being out of sync with the environment or having tracking becoming a problem. So in all the ways that matters from a technical standpoint of making a VR experience actually work, it's absolutely got it. It's not going to be as powerful as having a high-end PC running, say, an Oculus Rift S, but it's also something that you can take on the go that is beyond what you would see with the Oculus Go or any of the other mobile types of VR units that are out there. This may be, perhaps, after a while, once maybe the price drops, this may be the thing that finally brings this idea of real gaming in VR to a broader audience. Because it is something where you don't have to have a powerful PC or a PlayStation 4 to play it. Up until now, if your primary means of gaming was a Nintendo or a Microsoft system, that is, Microsoft console at least, then you really didn't have a doorway into VR unless you also then had either a PS4 or a powerful PC, or you had sort of a more substandard VR experience with some lower-end devices. Now, you have the opportunity to jump into it. And granted, the price tag to get into it may be a little steep right now, but you are getting the headset and both controllers. It is a standalone unit, so it's kind of like a gaming console type of price. that you're paying here. Again, $400 for the 64 gigabyte version, $500 for the 128 gigabyte version. Bear in mind, both of those are pretty reasonable amounts of memory as long as you're not loading things up. I don't know that you would necessarily need the 128 gigabytes, although I did go that route myself to have a nice big library when I'm on the go and showing people and things like that. I would also note alongside that, though, that most of the games at this point are $30 price point or less. Vader Immortal Episode 1, for Star Wars fans who are interested in this, is only $10. A lot of games that are out there for the system are low enough price point that over time you may find that the higher cost of entry winds up sort of fading as you realize that the cost of ownership over time, those later incurred costs of actually buying the games, are lower than what you would see with some other gaming systems, just depending on what type of experience you're going for. I'm definitely excited for it. I'm glad that I picked it up. I'm eagerly awaiting episode 2 of Vader Immortal, and I think I'll probably pick up another couple of games here in the next few days. I'm psyched for this thing. I'm loving the experience, and the portability can't be beat.